Hello YouTube, back once again, and for this video I want to talk about, once again, because I already reviewed it, the juggernaut of controversy that is the TV show 13 Reasons Why.
Hey, it's Hannah. Hannah Baker.
Holy shit.
So yes, like I said, I've already reviewed this show. They'll put a link in the description down below right there, but yeah, I've already reviewed this show, and I didn't want to make a second video because I watched this show like right when it came out because I was very excited by the creative team. I saw the critical acclaim it was getting, and I watched it just right when it came out. I did not expect it at all to become, like I said, just this juggernaut of controversy online. Like, I have never seen a television show this popular yet this much controversy so fast, and yeah, like, cause it's just crazy. Like, schools have been banning it. Like, I know, like in my district, like a letter was sent out to all parents, like warning them, parents that their kids may be watching this show. I know there's now just towns like that have like asked the library just to pull all copies of the book from shelves, and so yeah, this has become quite the fascinating piece of show to talk about. And the big thing online though is most people say they think this is a disgusting, horrible show that should not be seen by anyone, and I want to make a video as a counterpoint to all those complaints, because there are a few complaints I've been hearing again and again by people who haven't even seen the show. They only know what happens in it. That I feel they don't this show does not deserve to be hated for these reasons. So, and there are 5 major reasons I want to get into in this video. Now, before we start the countdown, let me just say to talk about some of these points, I will have to go into spoilers, so if you don't want to know what happens in the show and you still plan to watch it, cut out now, because I'm going to be going head first into spoilers from this point on, so just be aware. So let's start the countdown. Now, starting off with number 1 is probably the most obvious reason a lot of people have been complaining about this show for those who find it offensive, which is the concept of the show itself. This is the one reason I will give somewhat of a leeway and somewhat of a, yeah, I can get where you're coming from to the people who complain about this. Yes, this is very tough subject material with just talking about things like suicide and rape, and the fact that it is somewhat of an over-the-top setup. Like, seriously, like, how could this ever legitimately happen? Like how this girl like sets up this whole like cassette tape trail, and just like how like no one will just like tell the main character Clay like what exactly like his place in all of this is, and it is a bit silly, and I will admit it does require a quite a bit of suspension of disbelief. But I will say this, if that's like your major issue, don't get instantly turned off by it because it is an over-the-top setup, but you gotta give this show credit that once you after the setup, it pretty much all the show is completely grounded and just feels very real for the most part. That's what I like most about this show, and like most young adult dramas or adaptations that try to be like appealing to their audiences, so they don't want to be too upsetting. Now, this show is willing to go for all the darkness, and really have legitimate conversations about these ideas, and so yeah. But like I said, if you really can't get past how like insane of a premise this is, like how it's just too silly for such a dark material, I get it. But I would say try to get past it, because it is very good at talking about the subjects. It's just a bit of an over-the-top setup, so that's reason 1. Now for number 2, this is one of the bigger ones I've been hearing online a lot, which is the show is a glorification of suicide, and all I can say to the people who say that, did you watch the show to the end? Because okay, let's just say it how it is. Did you see the last episode when they do the suicide scene? Because, my God, that is I have sat through all of Hannibal, and that scene of Hannah slitting her wrist, that is, honest to God, the most horrific scene in television I've ever witnessed. Because, like, everyone I've talked to who has watched it, I fully expected them to cut away like they were just gonna do like how most media shows things like this, whether it be film or television, which is they would just like show like her holding the razor blade and like bring it towards her wrist, and then they would cut away and you just see her dead in the bathtub. But no, they show everything. They just made, and there's like no musical score. It's not that at the least bit like pretty or artsy, or like it's not like it's like really like beautifully shot or anything like that. No, it's completely silent. You have nothing but Langford's performance, and they just show everything in graphic detail. They make you watch every single moment of it, and it is honestly the most horrific scene of television I've ever witnessed in my life. So all I can say is I don't see how people can like look at this and say this is glorification, because my God, it's because I cannot think of anyone who could like look at that scene and said that was like a really artistically done scene, like it was like very artsy and like and kind of like and a glorification of what's going on. No, this was just brutal, and it just left me feeling dark and empty inside. Like I literally did have to, once I was done with the finale, like just had to like leave my room and just talk to someone. Just like I just needed some sort of human contact right after that, because it just left me with such, it made me physically shake in horror, that final scene, and that's never happened to me before, when some sort of visual media would make me shake in legitimate terror about what I was just witnessing. So yeah, honestly, all I can say to people who think this glorifies suicide, like, watch it to the end. Just watch that final episode, because that was just horrifying. That was legitimately horrifying. Now, for my third reason, I gotta talk about this scene that has essentially become a meme online of people who just find this a disgusting show, which is that final scene between Clay and the psychologist. Now, for those who don't know the specific line I'm talking about, let me insert a clip right here.
I cost a girl her life because I was afraid to love her.
So yeah, many people take that scene as basically Clay just saying to the psychologist at the end, like, if we all loved each other more, like, suicide wouldn't happen. And all I can say to those people, you're taking that statement way, way too literally. That is not at all what they're going for. What the writer's clearly talking about is they're talking about the idea of chaos theory, and I know this because the character Hannah has a monologue about this earlier in the season, in which she just says our actions can have larger ramifications than we can initially think. Like, small little choices we make can just lead to much more dark consequences than initially thought, and that's what Clay's saying there. He is not saying, hey, maybe if we all loved each other, suicide wouldn't be a thing. What he is saying is just saying, I'm going to be left contemplating for the rest of my life if I had stayed in that room that night and told her how I really felt about her, Hannah, maybe she would be alive right now. Having that outlet with me, everything would have been fine. And like, he's basically just saying to the psychologist, when you hear your tape, maybe you'll be stuck with the question the rest of your life. Maybe if I was more helpful that day, she would still be alive. And that's how it is for every person on the tape. It's the idea, if things had been slightly different, so many choices someone made a slightly different choice at a different moment, this girl would still be alive right now. But that's not what happened. These people made those choices, and they will be left, now that they have the tapes, and I've heard them, they will be left contemplating just, if I had just made a different choice that day, would she still be alive? And there's no clear answer for that, but that's the idea. It's not the idea that we should all love each other more. It's the idea what if things had been different? What if the idea of chaos theory? What if people had made different choices? Slightly different choices would have led to a drastically different outcome. So yeah, for those who really I have seen so many people really complain about that scene in particular, like saying like, oh, really, the dark, dramatic, like really serious show about teen suicide, that's the big message at the end. No, that is not the message at the end. You are taking that sentence way too literally. Now let's move on to reason number 4. This show is the explanation for why people kill themselves. Okay, first let me say this. For all those who do say we cannot that some people just suffer from depression because just they medically suffer from depression, there's no real reason, they just do. Yes, that is a completely true thing, and we can't act like that is not an actual thing. But also to those people, we can also not act like there aren't people who are driven to depression because of things that happen to them and what happens in their lives. Because I once was in a state of depression for a while earlier in my life, and it wasn't because I'm just one of those people who suffer from depression. It was just because so many things in my life became crashing down at once, and we just can't act like, for those people, we can't just act like some people aren't driven to depression because of things that happen to them, people's actions, things that are out of their control, what have you. But what some people find offensive from this is they do say that this show acts like it is the big all explanation for why at least teen suicide happens, which is just bullying and things like that. And all I can say is, I don't think that's true, because if you really think about this show, never once talks about suicide more than talking about just what happened to Hannah. They don't ever say the statement, this is why people commit suicide or kill themselves. Anytime they talk about suicide, they're specifically only saying, when they're talking about Hannah, is why did she kill herself? Like, how could we know if things were different, why she wouldn't have killed herself? Or in Hannah's case, when she's on the tape, she says, this is why I killed myself. They never once say people in general. They only talk about her, and that's what I feel most people miss about the show or misinterpret. This is not a show about why all teenagers commit suicide. This is a story about why this one particular teenager committed suicide, and some people will relate to some of the reasons that she was driven into a state of depression that eventually led to her taking her own life. But this never once says this is why all teenagers kill themselves. This is just saying, why did this character kill herself? What drove her to a state of depression? This character and no one else, and that's why I feel a lot of people really misinterpret about this show. And now let's move on to the 5th and final reason I've heard many complaints about with this show, which is this show never shows how someone can get help. And all I can say for this one is, yes, you're right, this show never does that, but all I can say to that, though, is that's just not the story that this show goes for, because in the end, what happened to Hannah? She doesn't get help. She just completely falls into a state of depression that pushes her over the edge, and she kills herself again. That's the story. This is a story, like I said, this is a story in chaos theory. This is not a story about like how people love each other more than the suicide wouldn't happen. This yeah, that's all I can say, because this just isn't the story it goes for, and there is the final reason 13, which you learn she did go to the psychologist, and the psychologist was completely just unhelpful. Like, she did absolutely nothing for her, and I know a lot of people said, oh, that's completely unrealistic. No school psychologist would be like that. I feel like we want to believe that's true. We all really desperately want to believe that if some kid, like, clearly, like, having some, like, bad mental issues went to his school psychologist, that psychologist would be able to help them and like, get them mental help, but what's a good example? Like, I remember once, like, when I was in high school, like, we once had an assembly one day in which a guy gave a presentation about his son who committed suicide, and the one part of the presentation, like, that got a lot of people was, he just says at one point, like, he after his son had killed himself, he went to the guy giving a presentation went to his school's counselor and said, what would you have done if he approached you in this situation? And honestly, what they said did not sound too different than what this school psychologist did at the end, was just kind of just like, do you want to talk about it? And like couldn't really offer much more than that. And I feel like we just want to believe things can be better. We want to believe that this would not happen in real life, but the fact is, this could possibly happen, and I'm sorry that this show did not show like like how someone could mentally recover, but that's not what the show was about. This was not about a show about someone who falls into depression, then gets help and recovers. This is a story about someone who fell into depression. No one ever helped her or could lend a hand to her, and she just killed herself in the end. And all I can say is, so I can just say that that's just not the story. But to be fair, like I said, oh, this was another thing. Like, I know a lot of people like read like that last scene between Clay when he goes to his old friend, whatever her name was, the goth girl throughout the series. When a lot of people just say like, oh, is he just like replacing her with like Hannah, just like admitting that like that girl's his one true love? No, that's not what it is. I'm very confident that's not what they're going for. It's just supposed to be Clay realizing like, okay, I didn't lend a hand to Hannah when she needed it. I can lend a hand to her, this girl, when she needs it, because they clearly talked about earlier before how she was going down a very dark road, that character, and yeah, so so like I said, this is not a story about how people get help. This was a story about people's actions, what the ramifications was, and then deciding on whether they want to make better choices or just honestly make worse choices and be even more awful than they were originally. So yeah, then that's my fifth reason for that's my fifth counterpoint. So, yeah. So, like I said, I don't think this show deserves all the hatred it gets. It is not a show for everyone, but I do believe, even if you don't like this show has gotten people talking more about these issues than anything else I've ever seen, and I do applaud this show for doing that. It has caused a lot of adults and teenagers to talk about ideas like suicide and rape and bullying more than anything else I've seen in probably ever. Like, this is just this show kind of has swept the nation for the most part, and yeah. But like I said, if you disagree with any of my counterpoints, I understand if you just could not get past it, if you just do still think this is offensive, that's completely your own opinion, but I honestly think, like, points like, what was this show about, like, how this show glorified, I honestly don't think this show did that. Or at least that's not at all what these people were going for, and yes, and honestly, like I said, I feel like this is as good, as serious, and as well made of it, and well told of a story as teen suicide could get, because, like, honestly, any other attempt I've ever seen at this has just been awful. Like, I remember, like, once, like, hearing, like, in the news the next, like, one day that, like, that show Glee, remember that, like, had, like, an episode on suicide, and, like, I just had to watch the scene online, and I just thought it was the most, like, shockingly offensive thing of all time. The fact that this show, a show that was just meant to sell cover songs to tweens, thought it had the right to talk about suicide while doing, like, just doing another, like, cover to sell on iTunes. Like, no, that was an offensive depiction of teen suicide. This was a very serious, well thought out, and very caring talk about that. But, so yeah, I leave you with that thought. YouTube, as always, please subscribe, and I will see you next time. Okay, bye.